Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's September 13th, 2019, and this is another update on the greenhouse reconstruction. Uh, One of the things I've done over this last 24 hours is I've been mounting the sill plates of the Lord & Burnham aluminum and glass greenhouse to the concrete, which is in the center of these insulated of these walls, these 2-foot tall walls. The foundation here is insulated concrete foam framework that has 8 inches of concrete poured down the center of it. And we poured that concrete 6 years ago. 7 years ago I took the building down, and when I took the building down I used at that time, which was my best tape measure, to take measurements and all. And I was getting inconsistent measurements when I was measuring the length, the width, and all the building. And one of the problems when you're using a tape measure like this is you can certainly have some error, especially the longer the spans you have. If you don't have something to help support the tape, if there's the windy conditions, all of those things, or if you have an older tape measure that's been out in the sun, it tends to stretch some, so it may not be as accurate. This one is a newer tape measure that I've been using for a couple of years. It's a 300-foot one with longitudinal fibers in it, and it really holds up well. And so this tape measure I elected to use squaring up the building today. Now when I squared the footer and the forms for the insulated concrete forms to pour the concrete, I used the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where if you know two sides of a right triangle, you can figure out what the diagonal length is by taking the square root of the sum of the other two sides that are squared. So that's how we're able to get fairly accurate measurements and layout for the foundation and the insulated concrete forms. However, when you're pouring inside of these insulated concrete forms, we used a big pumper truck, and I had several guys working with me, and so the walls can actually expand some and actually blow out. We didn't have a blowout, but we had some expansion of the walls as well. So when in some of the footage that you're going to see that, gosh, although the aluminum looks absolutely perfectly straight, because I went and re-squared everything yesterday, the insulation, the white and the walls of the foundation wall, the 2-foot high wall, aren't perfect. And that's because of the differential pressures when the concrete is there, especially where two walls meet. When it's just a straight run, much less of a chance of there being any bowing or shifting of it, as long as you've got the foundation supported adequately. So when I took this building down, I saw that there was as much as a ½ inch variance in the length, the width, and the span going across in different locations. There was differences in the gap between each one of these sections, between the posts and where the trusses are. So I knew that things weren't exactly perfect. And there was material that had built up in between some of the joints as well. So I spent a lot of time cleaning up all the material before reassembling it. And as I reassembled it, I could get things to be at least being plumb, meaning vertically up, straight up and down correctly, and get my lengths and spans worked out. However, I didn't want to try and anchor this system down because I didn't know where everything would end up fitting ultimately. So once I got all of the main structure put up together, closed up the gaps tightly, got everything locked together extremely well, then I went ahead yesterday and disconnected the attachment that I had to the work area where this greenhouse attaches to the work area, that super insulated building behind us. I disconnected that. The structure was really, really firm, so I felt good about it. Now the reason I attached it initially to that work area, because when I put up the first truss, I had to install I-beams to hook up the second truss and the first set of posts, and I worked my way out here. If you go back to the videos, you'll see how I did it. So it was necessary to secure the building so that when we have the high winds, things aren't getting blown all over the place. But by and large, you put your anchor bolts in and anchor that sill plate down to the foundation very early on. You're often taking an impermeable membrane, an insulation, putting it down on top of the concrete, and then putting a weather-resistant sill plate on top of that, and then building your walls up from there. Since we have the aluminum here, I didn't use an insulation. Ended up being that it's almost perfect, the top of the concrete where it seals with the aluminum system that's here. And I wasn't sure about that at first because I have insulation to fill in, blow-in insulation as well. So yesterday, once I disconnected the first truss from the work area, I went through and re-squared everything up. I used my tape measure, I did my diagonal measurements on each section, did my width, and of course things were off as much as 1/4 of an inch. But ultimately we got everything lined up perfectly. I used a 5/8 inch drill bit, masonry drill bit on my Bosch hammer drill, and drove in 7-inch long 5/8 inch wedge anchor bolts. So the anchor bolts are set all the way around. There's 2 anchor bolts for every section of the greenhouse. Many of the areas I use these small wedges that, because of the sill is actually tapered some, and this wedge is close to counteracting that, so to make the anchor bolts make good even pressure straight down as a result of compensating for the 2 angles of the sill and this wedge, and these wedges are aluminum. I took these off the original building. So I got all of those locked down all the way around. I did use a little bit of footage. I mounted a GoPro camera on my head, and I have a little bit of time lapse, so I'll play a little bit of that as well. But you know, the rule is anchor your sill plates down early on, and then you build your walls up from there. The reason I didn't do that is because we had to see what the exact length would be, filling in all the gaps, getting everything squared up with everything, because if I had miscalculated how everything should have been with the sill plate, well then the trusses and the walls may not have been turned out perfectly. So far everything looks great. I'm really happy. I think we're within a 1/16 of an inch, 32nd of an inch, which is about as good as I could possibly hope for. So if you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. Appreciate your interest in this project and all, and we'll keep you updated as time goes on. If you found the video of value, please give us a thumbs up, and by all means, folks, have a great day. Bye-bye now. you.